pratyotito dhamafana sahasram. Translation: the four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumar, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time, Lord Shankarshan, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. Purport by His Divine Grace. The Lord is sometimes addressed as Uttam Shlok, which means one who is worshipped with selected words by devotees. A profusion of such selected words comes from a devotee who is fully absorbed in affection and love for the devotional service of the Lord. There are many instances in which even a small boy who was a great devotee of the Lord could offer excellent prayers in the choicest words for glorification of the pastimes of the Lord. In other words, without the development of fine affection and love, one cannot offer prayers to the Lord very suitably. Text 7. Proktam kila tad bhagavatta mena nivritti dharma bhiratayatena sanat kumaraya sa chaha prishtaha shankyaya nayanga dritavritaya. Lord Shankar's translation, Lord Shankarshan thus spoke the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam to the great sage Sanat Kumar, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumar also, in his turn, when inquired of by Shankayayana Muni, explained Srimad Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Shankarshan. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. This is the way of the Parampara system. Although Sanat Kumar, the well-known great saintly Kumara, was in the perfect stage of life, still, he heard the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Shankarshan. Similarly, when he was questioned by Shankayayana Rishi, he spoke to him the same message he had heard from Lord Shankarshan. In other words, unless one hears from the proper authority, one cannot become a preacher. In devotional service, therefore, 2 items out of the 9, namely hearing and chanting, are most important. Without hearing nicely, one cannot preach the message of Vedic knowledge. Now, these 2 verses are utterly, utterly beautiful. They are utterly divine. They go into the subtleties of hearing and repetition, hearing and chanting, the parampara system, and the subtleties of the guru-disciple relationship in the magical way of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is to be very concise, but very deep and profound. And then we have His Divine Grace's purports, which give us insight into that depth and put that profound knowledge into an understandable way for us. I was just looking, first of all, starting with the first verse, describing how Sanat Kumar and the 4 Kumaras, they approach beautiful Lord Shankarshan, as the Supreme Lord, but also as a spiritual master. And these specific words that are used, that they speak to him or they sing to him, they glorify him with in words which have a rhythm, which indicates affection and love. So it's not just choice words, but there's a rhythm which indicates affection and love. It goes on to say that, many young boys, Srila Prabhupada explains, even young boys, little boys, can make suitable prayers to the Lord. Anyone can, as long as they have this affection and love for the Lord or the process of devotional service for the Lord. So this is really powerful, because that affection is telling us that, we're hearing here that even if our affection is for the journey towards surrender, one can then be empowered by their affection and love, by their appetite to pick the choicest words and enunciate them and recite them in a rhythm that communicates affection and love. You know, when the babbling of a child is imbued with love and affection, it sounds like nectar to the ears of the parents, because that rhythm that the child speaks in indicates the affection and love, even if the words don't entirely articulate it. Here we're speaking about perfected beings, and it's describing how, and Maitreya Rishi is describing to Vidura how actually they were careful about even the words that they chose. You know, we hear about boys, little boys who have, and we learn from these little boys who have worshipped Krishna so wonderfully, so wonderfully. We hear about Dhruva Maharaj, you know, Dhruva Maharaj's beautiful prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam when he is met with the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the prayers that he recites, they come spontaneously from the mouth of a little boy who's only 5 or 6 years old, a little boy who's been standing on one leg for a very long time, a little boy who hasn't been eating and drinking, a little boy whose austerities were so profound, the universe stopped breathing. The universe was choking. A little boy, the most beautiful prayers, so beautiful, they made it into the Bhagavatam. We still recite them today, thousands of years later. We look at Prahlad Maharaj, beautiful prayers, prayers of innocence, prayers of affection, prayers of desire to serve, prayers of protection, prayers inviting, please let me carry the burden of the entire world if it means everybody gets to love you. Prahlad Maharaj, again, a little boy, not even a little pious boy of a pious family, but a little pious boy of a demonic family whose father was a demon, empowered with the rhythm and choicest words to glorify the Lord because he had love and affection. And then we also have the cowherd boys. Their words are very different. Their words are very different to Dhruva Maharaj's words, very different to Prahlad Maharaj's words. With their words, the cowherd boys tease Krishna. But when they tease Krishna or when they play with Krishna, they also glorify him. You know, oh, Krishna, you're so wonderful. What did your wonderful mother pack for you for lunch today? Can I have some? And I'll give you some of what I have. The rhythm of their words is filled with love and affection. The rhythm of their words and their choicest words communicate their love and affection. So, love and affection for the process of devotional service, love and affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, love and affection for the recipient of our feelings, that is what really determines what comes out of our mouth and indicates, particularly in this context, indicates our desire to hear what we want to hear about, how much we want to hear it, and how much we appreciate the person who's sharing with us. Shankarshan, with his 1,000 hoods, is always meditating. He's always meditating on Krishna. And it describes here how, although he's in meditation, before he speaks, he starts to radiate an effulgence from his glowing stones on his head. He has these beautiful jewels on his hoods, and they start to glow. It's him indicating, I'm so pleased by what you said. It's so beautiful what you're asking. It's so beautiful what you're saying. What you're saying tells me you really want to hear. Whoever I'm meditating on, you want to hear it so much that I'm willing to break my meditation and share with you what I'm thinking about, what I'm meditating on, who I'm meditating on, the purport to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and complete surrender and love for him. And he shows this. So the guru needs to know, because the second verse really goes into that. Yes, they were approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes, they were approaching him, even though they already were perfect and they knew all the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. But such was their appetite for devotional service. They approached Lord Shankarshan not just as the Lord, but also as the spiritual master, and asked, please, can you give us the purport to the Srimad Bhagavatam? What is it all about? Why? So Guru needs to know that the student is interested, the student is inquiring, and that the student is inquiring submissively. What do we mean by submissive? Submissive means that I am receptive. I'm submitting myself, I'm putting myself before you, in front of you as an offering. Please, I'm inviting you, please, I want to know from you. Please give me the answer. Okay, I'm open, I'm ready to receive. When are we most submissive? When are we most submissive? There are so many things, attitudes, and motives and aspects to submission. There's so many different types of submission, right? When Krishna speaks about the 4 different types of people who approach him, yes, those who come out of knowledge, those who come out of curiosity, those who come out of a desire for wealth, and those who want to avoid distress or want their distress relieved. They are all submissive. All of them are submissive. But there's an evolution to our submission. You look at Arjun as well. There is an evolution to his submission throughout the Bhagavad Gita. He starts off inquiring out of desperation, out of suffering, right? I'm anxious, I'm bewildered. It describes, he literally starts to go into anxiety. He has that very typical biological response to anxiety. He gets a dry mouth, his hands are shaking, he's lost his intelligence, he becomes weak, he has to put down his bow, you know. And so he starts off with an inquiry which is based on submission, which is based on relieve me from my suffering. Okay, and there's a desperation there, right? So that is going to make us submissive, but our prayers and the rhythm and of our words and the choice of words we have will reflect the type of submission we have, right? We read the prayers of those who are, like, you look at Dhruva Maharaj. Why did he go to the forest? Why did he go to seek out the Supreme Personality of Godhead? He went out of desperation, out of a desire for material gain. He wanted a kingdom bigger than his father's. But however we approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representatives, just approaching is so purifying. Just inquiring submissively is so purifying, is so powerful, that our motive starts to change and transform, just like Arjun's did. You look at Arjun throughout the Bhagavad Gita, it becomes very apparent that the type of submission he has is changing, because the type of questions he has changes, the kind of words he uses changes, right? He starts off inquiring submissively, talking about his suffering and the suffering of the women and the children and how he might be perceived, you know, and how he's going to feel. And so this is, and same with Dhruva, it starts off like that. But then through that process, what happens? The motive and mood changes to the desires becoming spiritual, desires being in line with devotional service, just like Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj also submitted from the beginning, but his prayers were always about surrender and devotional service. All he wanted to do was serve. So our submission is rooted in our attitude, which is underpinned by what is our desire. Where's the desperation coming from? Is our desperation coming from relief from material distress, a desperation to acquire something material? Is it? And this changes. We can analyze this for ourselves. It changes, and our prayers will change. The words, the rhythm, the tone will all change. Or like the Cowherd Boys, is our prayer completely born of unconditional affection and gratitude? And there's gratitude coupled with all of these. And you know, the powerful thing here, it's really important to note that these devotees who approach Shankarshan, they already know everything. It describes them as perfect. They already know all the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, and yet they still have an appetite to hear. Such is their greed to know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to hear about him, to serve him through their hearing, and to glorify him. And you know, there's choicest words. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about communication. And he talks about how communication in the mode of goodness, which is our platform for transcendence, is we have to really be careful about, is what I'm saying necessary? Is it honest? And is it kind? And from there, then we can move into prayers and inquiring submissively in a way that is transcendental. So as we see that our submission can be underpinned, inquiring submissively can be underpinned by various attitudes, we can then understand something very deep and powerful, that the guru-disciple relationship is dynamic. It is always changing. It doesn't stay stagnant. So unless we are growing it, unless we are curating it, unless we are checking it, it will go backwards. It doesn't just stay the same. It's not, there's no cruise control button, okay, on the guru-disciple relationship. There's no cruise control in Krishna consciousness. There's no cruise control in relationships. Look at any of your relationships. Is there a cruise control button? No. You might think you're floating and gliding for a little while, but if you let it go on for too long, you take your foot off the gas, it will come to a shuddering halt and you'll find yourself stuck. So these stages of inquiring submissively, asking ourselves, where is my submission coming from, is a really profound yet simple exercise we can all do when it comes to looking at our relationship with our different gurus. Remember, when we read, we're approaching guru. When we approach the initiating spiritual master, the Diksha Guru, of course we're approaching guru. When we're hearing their classes, when we speak to our Shiksha gurus, our gurus by instruction, when we hear their classes, what's our approach? Are we inquiring out of duty? Is it another thing to tick off on my sadhana sheet? Are we inquiring because we're absolutely desperate? Absolutely desperate. We've reached the end of our tether and there's no material solution to our problem. And now we need an answer, even though we've neglected to speak to them all this time. What is it that's driving our inquiry? Or do we have real affection and gratitude for what they're teaching us? Do we have real affection and gratitude for them, for the books, for the devotees, for the gurus? Do we have real affection and gratitude for the process? And do we have real gratitude and affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And like I said, this is always dynamic. It's always changing. And if we find ourselves stuck in our ability to hear, right? Sometimes we've all experienced this. Just like when we're really hungry, the most simple meal feels like the best meal, right? If you're really hungry, even some mashed potatoes with a little bit of butter and salt, which anyone can make, okay, tastes like the best thing in the whole world. When we really have hunger to hear, the most simple things from Shastra feel deeply satisfying to the heart, deeply satisfying. But when we're not hungry, the most banquet, a 7-course banquet meal feels like torture. When we have no spiritual appetite, the most complex philosophical, deep rasic topics feel like torture. They burn the ears and the heart, and the mind goes, when can we get out of here? Or the mind goes, I already know this. I've heard this before. And it switches off and starts to meditate on other things. So how do we keep this appetite alive? How do we keep this appetite, this submissive inquiry alive? I'm going to come back to that, because actually in the second verse, it is emphasized this system of parampara. Why parampara? Why not? What does this mean? Why disciplic succession? Why do I have to hear the Lord's words from somebody he told it to, who then told it to somebody else, and to then someone else, then someone else, then someone else, then someone else, and then finally it reaches me? I've played Chinese whispers before. In Chinese whispers, the message gets lost. So why do we do that in spiritual life? Why do we do that in spiritual life? There's a very beautiful explanation here, you know. And I'm going to read you something from Srila Prabhupada. Actually, two things I want to share. There's a beautiful book. I don't know if it's still available. I know you get the PDF. It's called The Spiritual Master and the Disciple. It is a collection of all of Srila Prabhupada's quotes about the guru-disciple relationship. So I'm reading from part 2, which is the section on Parampara. And this is a little excerpt. Srila Prabhupada says in the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, page 87, he says, there is no authority superior to Sri Krishna. And if we stick to this principle, we can become gurus. We don't need to change our position to become a guru. All we have to do is follow in the disciplic succession stemming from Sri Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has advised, Amara Agyaya Guru Hana Tara E Desha. As Madhya 7.1-8. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed people to learn from him and then go teach people within their own villages. One may think I am illiterate and have no education. I was not born in a very high family. How can I become a guru? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that it is not very difficult. Yare dekha tare kaha Krishna upadesha. Simply speak whatever Krishna speaks. Then you become a guru. Whoever speaks what Krishna has spoken is not a guru, but a rascal. A guru only speaks what Krishna has spoken. So, Krishna is a perfect person. He gives perfect knowledge. What does this mean? What is perfect knowledge? Perfect knowledge means there's no imperfection. Perfect knowledge means there's no mistake. Perfect knowledge means there's no illusion. Perfect knowledge means there's no cheating. So there's no mistakes in the knowledge. There's no illusion. There's no trickery. There are no imperfections in that knowledge. And the motive behind that knowledge is completely transparent. Krishna is not trying to cheat anyone. Why? Because he's completely self-satisfied, Atmaram. So therefore, no interpretation is required. Right? So this parampara, when we talk about the disciplic succession, we can understand that the disciplic succession ensures that because the message is from a perfect source, it cannot be tampered with. And each person receives it as they hear it and shares it in the same way. As Prabhupada explains, if you hear perfectly, then you will share perfectly. If we hear perfectly, we will chant perfectly. Yes? So perfect words have to be expressed perfectly and they have to be received perfectly. That perfection is rooted in our affection and our gratitude and our desire, which underpin our submission. So there's another purport, a little clip I want to share, a little excerpt, where Srila Prabhupada explains this, the power of hearing, the impact of inquiring submissively. You know, Srila Prabhupada explains in this purport that actually one who doesn't hear properly can't preach, right? One who doesn't hear with this hunger can't preach, right? It's just like a person who doesn't eat properly has no energy. So when we don't hear properly, we don't have this ability to transmit. So we're now quoting from the Antya Leela, 571 to 74. And this is the translation of the verse. I cannot properly describe the discourses of Ramananda Rai, for he is not an ordinary human being. He is fully absorbed in the devotional service of the Lord. There is one other thing Ramananda Rai said to me. Do not consider me the speaker in these talks about Krishna. Whatever I speak is personally spoken by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like a stringed instrument, I vibrate whatever he causes me to speak. In this way, the Lord speaks through my mouth to preach the cult of Krishna consciousness. Within the world, who will understand this pastime of the Lord? I mean, isn't that beautiful? It's Krishna's pastime to vibrate this knowledge through our heart and through our tongue and through the knowledge, through the heart and tongue of the spiritual master. Krishna actually enjoys this. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, one is forbidden to accept the guru or spiritual master as an ordinary human being. Gurushu nara matehi. A spiritually advanced person who acts with authority as the spiritual master, speaks as the Supreme Personality of Godhead dictates from within. Thus is not he that is speaking personally. When a pure devotee or spiritual master speaks, what he says should be accepted as having been directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Parampara system. Now, if we take this and the previous clip or excerpt that I shared together, both things have to be there. One, that what is being spoken is underpinned by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And secondly, that the person describing, the person speaking, is very cognizant that what they're speaking is not of their own. And the person receiving then can receive it wholeheartedly, that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead speaking. What do I mean by this? We have, digital media has given us a culture where people don't quote who they quote. They don't share where they got their knowledge from. We've got a lot of experts by experience and a lot of opinions being, touted around as expertise when they're just opinions. And it is seeping into devotional culture. I hear it all the time. It's always been there to some degree. Prabhupada said this, my Guru Maharaj said this. Oh, where did Prabhupada say that? I don't know. But at least people would say, Prabhupada said this, or my Guru Maharaj said this, or so-and-so Das or Dasi said this. At least that was there. Now, I heard one senior devotee say this. We won't even name the senior devotee. Whether they can't remember or don't feel like giving any credit, we don't know. Okay? But this is seeping in. Or forget that. Not even one senior. I heard one senior, one guru say this. It's just explained without any, it's in this Shastra, from this sadhu, or from this guru. Nothing like that. You know how damaging that is to us when we do that? When we take knowledge and don't give credit to those who we received it from. Not only do we lose out on the empowerment and blessings that come from that person, but we lose out on the empowerment and blessings that come from the people that preceded them, that they learned from. And we're just on our own. And so what we speak has much less potency. And it has much less ability to change hearts. Yes, you might change people's minds. You may get a few more hearts on your Instagram. You may get a few more claps and a few more comments. You may be a bit more famous. You may get a bit more glorified because they've got nobody else to glorify, because they don't know who else has taught you what you've, quoted or what you've shared. But that's it. It'll just stop there. Whereas when we quote, when we give glory, when we reference those who we have learned from, yes, the spotlight moves away from us. How terrible for our false ego. Yes, the spotlight moves away from us. But when we shine the spotlight on the parampara, we get so many blessings. I mean, Shankarshan, he started shining. His gems on his hood started gleaming and glistening just by being appreciated. Even though he was approached by personalities who knew everything already. So this, it's very important to understand that perfect hearing leads to perfect chanting. Perfect hearing leads to perfect recitation. But it must be coupled with two things, the parampara. Three things, the parampara, our attitude, and also remembering that when we have purity, because actually giving credit is a sign of purity. It means I'm actively moving the spotlight away from my sense of who I am and giving credit where it's supposed to be. When there's purity, whether it's a preacher, a guru, shiksha guru, diksha guru, it doesn't matter. But that purity endows one with the ability to channel the message just like an instrument, just like Ramananda Rai here is describing. I'm a stringed instrument. I vibrate whatever he causes me to speak. In this way, the Lord speaks through my mouth to preach the cult of Krishna consciousness within the world. Who will understand this pastime of the Lord? Krishna takes pleasure in endowing the spiritual masters with the ability to channel his love and mercy. And then the heart and the tongue and the mind and the body take on the qualities that are required and are not limited by the conditioning. It's so important, hearing, because what we hear shapes our desires. Full stop. Full stop. Categorically, the number one thing that shapes our desires is what we expose ourselves to. So what we hear shapes our desires. The more receptivity we hear it with, the more potent its ability to shape our desires. Listen to this, okay? Please hear me. If you can do anything to improve the shape of your mind, is work on your appetite for hearing. Don't be satisfied just hearing regularly. Don't be satisfied with just hearing with rapt attention. Now, if you're not hearing regularly, definitely get that on the table, okay, first. Then you work on rapt attention. But once you're hearing regularly with rapt attention, okay, then we want to see, how can I increase my hunger? How can I fine-tune my rapt attention? How can I move my rapt attention from material desperation to spiritual desperation, to love, gratitude, and affection? Because when my hearing is like that, then my expression will be like that. My expression will be the kind of expression where my words are necessary, truthful, kind, and carry the rhythm of love and affection when I'm praying to my teachers and to my spiritual master and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how do we endear the spiritual master? How do we endear the Supreme Personality of Godhead? We endear them by changing the purpose and the motive for our appetite to hear. As we change that, we change our motive to express. And it starts with Guru. Because the same way we endear the Guru, inquire submissively, which leads to affection, which leads to gratitude. Gratitude breeds more affection. It's like this virtuous cycle that's set up. Okay, as we endear the Guru, then we are endowed with transcendental realization. We're endowed with knowledge. We're endowed with further ability to hear better, express better, chant better. So if you can walk away from anything with these two verses, we can ask ourselves, first of all, if we find ourselves stuck and stagnant, we may look advanced to the rest of the world, but there is no level of advancement that is a place that one can just sit and settle. Even when you get to prema, prema's ever increasing. Oh, we get to prema and that's it. Okay, that's when the cruise control starts. No. The nature of prema is that it makes you want more and more and more. It makes you want to surrender more and more and more. You read the poetry of those who are at prema or even Bhav. They wish for millions of mouths. And they say, even if I had millions of mouths, I wouldn't be able to say enough wonderful things about you. Right? So if we find ourselves stuck, first we can ask ourselves, what am I hearing on a regular basis? What am I hearing on a regular basis? And if you do a thorough analysis of 24 hours a day, you will realize that actually most of the time we are not hearing something transcendental. I'm saying include everything, what you hear at work, what you talk about at home, what you talk about on the phone, what you do for light entertainment, what you do for heavy entertainment. What are you hearing? This means what you read and what you listen to. What are we hearing? When we find ourselves despondent, down, spiritually stuck, what am I hearing? Start there and start moving the proportion of time you hear transcendental topics. Increase that. Then we look at our attitude and attention to that hearing. Now, I know yesterday was spoken about attention, but attitude drives attention and attention drives attitude. Where we're most attentive, we develop affection and attachment. But where we have affection and attachment, we become also more attentive. Okay, so they go hand in hand. It's not, it's not one directional positive effect. It is virtuous, circular, and cyclical. Okay, so what's our attitude towards hearing and what's our appetite and attention for hearing? We can look at our inquiry, our motives of our inquiry. Is it out of duty? Is it out of desperation? Is it out of gratitude? Is it glorification? Our mind is our own to control. Our mind is our own to shape. We are not our mind. We must be careful to not become lazy followers of our mind. It is ours to control. Our mind absorbs much more when it is receptive. So it is not enough to just curate our hearing, but curating our attitude towards our hearing and attention to hearing is equally, if not more important, because actually, if we are very receptive, then even a small sound bite can be transformative. And when we're not receptive, listening to hours and hours of lectures doesn't really go in. And if our mind is ours to control, then surely we want to shape it to have divine psychology and not just be bound and shackled to material and human and ego psychology. Because this knowledge is so powerful, it can either bind us if we misuse it or we hear it from the wrong source, or it can completely liberate us and free us if we approach it with affection and attention. So I'm going to stop there and open up to you for your questions and comments, which you always have beautiful questions and comments. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Thank you, Shakti, as always. So beautiful. Even though this is recorded, but I also jotted down some statements you made, which I feel are very important and helpful to my devotional service. So I have a couple questions, but we'll first go to the devotees. Please, if you have a question, comment, reflections, realizations, you may want to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question or share your reflections. Hare Krishna.
Parameshwari?
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, how are you?
Thank you for such a beautiful class. So much nectar. And it's very timing. This is a topic that I've been struggling a little bit in terms of finding the right time to absorb the most when I hear, either when I read or listen to lectures. And I try to work for 30 minutes, and usually on the way to work in the morning, I like to hear lectures, and I'm able to hear and kind of absorb to some extent. But then on the way back to home from work, I like to hear, but it's just so hard. Like even when I play a lecture, my mind just cannot absorb anything. And when I get home from work, I desire to read, but it's really hard. And so I figured that the only way for me to really being able to have some association through reading is really, I have to figure out somehow doing it in the morning. And but I don't know if there's any other ways that I can still able to increase my hearing. Like at the end of the day, I feel like, I mean, in terms of the mode of nature, obviously in the evening and afternoon is harder for the mind. But yeah, I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
When you go to work, you have meetings?
I'm a therapist.
Do you have meetings at work? It's just a simple question, yes?
Yeah.
Somebody else sets up those meetings, so you go to those meetings for that person, right? Do you show up on time?
Yes.
Do you make sure you have enough energy?
Yes.
Okay. When you hear, who are you hearing for?
I like to hear for Krishna, but I think the majority of the time I'm hearing for myself.
Yes, and that's what we should be. Yes, we should be.
Own spiritual benefit.
That's the best type of selfishness. Okay, transcendental selfishness. Okay, so yes, you're making an appointment with yourself. We shouldn't cancel appointments with ourselves, and we should certainly show up just as energized for appointments with ourselves as we do for everybody else. Whether that appointment with ourselves is for our physical self-care, our emotional self-care, and even more so for our spiritual self-care. We can know the theory about the modes. We can sit here and talk about the modes, but you know it. We all know it. You're fresh in the morning, mode of goodness is there in the morning, the mind is going to be tamed and receptive. At the end of the day, no, forget the modes. Modes are there, but we're knackered. Okay, if you've done a full day service or either in the temple or outside of the temple, people are going to be tired. Your mind, our mind is our bridge. Our mind and intelligence are a bridge to the soul. Okay, our brain, our body is a temple. Okay, our heart's an altar. They need to be taken care of. And when we make these appointments with ourselves, we owe it to ourselves to show up. Because wherever we show up, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there. Wherever we show up, Guru's there. So rather than trying to increase your hearing, see what little tweaks you can make to improve your physical and psychological strength and receptivity to hearing when you're able to. And try and clear out time to only hear, where your body's not doing anything else. Where, I mean, you've had time in the temple. You've lived in the temple. You know what it's like to just sit in class and hear on a regular basis, and the difference it makes when your body and your mind are in the same place. When we are on the move and our body's going somewhere else and our mind is somewhere else, that in itself takes its toll on us. That in itself takes away some of our attention. You know, so it's there's no big magical answer. What it is don't cancel appointments with yourself and show up just as energized as you would for anybody else. You owe yourself just as much as you owe everybody else. At least that. Yes? Okay.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. You're muted.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Anyone else with something to ask or to share? Well, Mother, I have this question. Let me check here. Okay. Talking about speaking and not referencing where we're getting our information from. In other words, not giving credit where credit is due. And I learned this firsthand because I remember one time in my college English class, I wrote an essay that I should have had an A, but I had a low B because I failed to reference.
Right.
And it was deemed as plagiarized, like I was using others' information as my information. So this excuse to say this knowledge is even there in the material world. So what to speak of the spiritual world? But my question then is, when does one's only realization of what he has practiced, what he has heard from the authorities, come through, and when can such an individual also speak based on his realization? Because speaking on your realization is not directly like a reference of what a bygone Acharya said. But we are also encouraged to come to a level where we can have realization of what the previous Acharyas have said. So I'm just debating in my mind, when does my realization come into the show and how appropriate it is?
Yeah. That's a powerful question. Actually, from the beginning, Srila Prabhupada has set up all the classes in such a way that we read his translation, we read his purport, we read the Sanskrit, and we give some sharing according to time, place, and circumstance. Why do we do this? Prabhupada's perfect. Krishna's words are perfect. You're asking the question as if there's a time when we are perfect enough to be able to do it. I asked Tirtha Swami Gurudev a similar question. We were editing Sri Upanishad, his commentary on Sri Upanishad. And at that time, he was one of the first to write a commentary tackling a book that Prabhupada had already written a commentary on. And so I asked him a question. I asked him, oh, Gurudev, I don't mean this in an offensive way, but how come you're writing a commentary on a book that your spiritual master's written a commentary to? And he smiled. He said, I'm not offended. He said, it's not offensive. He said, I'm going to answer your question by asking you a question. He said, why don't you just read the translation and the purport in class and get up and go? He said, why'd you share something more? Why do you give a class? And I said, to teach according to time, place, and circumstance, to share realization. He said, yes, both things are there. He goes, but there's something much more important. And this was a long time ago. This was 24 years ago, and it hasn't left me because it just really, it's something that really helps me in my spiritual life. He said, for your own purification. He said, none of us share anything, share any realization because we have any ability or qualification to do so. Our qualification is the instruction of the spiritual master, and we do it actually for our own purification. And so reading Bhagavatam, the more and more we hear, right, the first person that hears what comes out of our mouth is us. Whose ear is closest to my mouth? Mine. Right? So the Lord works through us, but he works for us. And as long as we stay with Guru Sadhu Shastra, when we're sharing realizations, we should also be having our own checking system, is what I'm saying, in line with Guru Sadhu and Shastra. And that's where, again, referencing helps. If we don't reference, we're more likely to go off track with the Guru Sadhu Shastra. Does that make sense? So it's not so much that there's ever a time where someone is perfect enough to give realization. You hear from even the perfected acharyas, like we have here, the four Kumaras. They're perfect. They're still inquiring. Forget sharing realizations. They're still asking questions. You look at Maitreya Rishi. He's qualified. He's the most quoted person in the Bhagavatam. Okay, he has the most verses. And yet he sits there saying that he doesn't know anything. Okay, so even the perfect person never thinks that there's a stage of perfection where one is qualified to give realization. It's always a case of we share realizations for our own purification. Okay?
Thank you so much. See, I was, I'm always asking questions. So once I asked Gurudev a very silly question, and he laughed, but he answered the question. Because, Gurudev used to say that I want to grow. I don't want to be the same as I was last year. And I was thinking to myself, Gurudev, what are you talking about? To grow. So with my slippery tongue, I asked him a question. I said, Gurudev, how can you say? I mean, even my questioning was, excuse my language, was crazy itself. I said, how can? But that was my question. I said, how can you say you want to grow, you don't want to be who you were yesterday? You're already up there. And he laughed. He said, you think like that. So it's amazing. But in line with what we're talking about, but maybe you can help me. This is a personal question that by Sri Guru Krishna devotee's mercy, when we meet together like this in a Sadhu Sangha discussing scriptures, my steel heart somehow melts a little bit. And I feel a little bit of love for Guru and Krishna and devotees. But almost immediately after the Sangha, everything dissipates. And I wish that I could retain the little love and joy, the appetite you're talking about, I have will continue. But it dies out, or at best, it dies down. And I'm wondering if there is something else I needed to do to keep the appetite always burning.
It's important that after we've had a banquet, we give time to digest. If you move on to the next thing immediately, it doesn't really register or nourish in the same way. So where a lot of our inspiration, where we find that we tend to feel most inspired when we are in a group hearing, then it is important to give that time immediately afterwards. When you come off, perhaps some time to sit, write down your reflections, and not just your reflections, but take one thing from what you've heard or reflected on that you feel that you can apply to your life in a way that it synergistically fits. It's not another new thing to add, but it fits with something you're already doing or fine tunes it. And you know what? If you can, immediately go and invest in it. Immediately go and invest in it, even if you only take 2 minutes to do that. Because what you've then done is you've taken something that's inspirational and energy. Inspiration's energy, isn't it? Right? It's an energy, it's a feeling. You've then made it gross, put it on paper, and then you've made it even grosser, even more real. Gross means real, right? It's realized, it's in real time, it's in present time, by doing something about it. So just like a heavy meal, actually any meal needs a bit of time to digest. When we come together like this, yes, it's delicious and finger licking good and, you know, all of those things, but we need time to digest it. So rather than jumping to the next thing, because when we jump to the next thing, we move away from sitting in the mode of transcendence and goodness, and we move back into the other modes. And most of us are living, sadly, in countries where it's governed by the mode of ignorance and passion, unless our homes are really designed like temples and have an atmosphere of sattva and shuddha sattva. And even then, our minds carry all these different modes because we don't know what other environments we've been moving in. Usually we need some way to just sit and digest. So, you know, it's you're inquisitive, you have a very open heart, you have a natural appetite to, just like our spiritual master, to grow. You have a growth mindset, to be better, to grow more. And but we want to grow from what we've eaten, we have to give it time to digest.
Thank you so much, Mother. I think we have a question or reflection from Drishti. Please, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna Mataji, my obeisances to you. I was thinking about this. So how can I listen to, you know, to the talks submissively? Because like with certain talks, I feel more connected, like with Sachidanand Swami. He's very soft-spoken, you know, so I can digest it better. But some of the speakers, it doesn't connect really well. So in that moment, how just to be submissive, really?
That's a good question. There's no point in any of us denying that we're all either still at the stage, or we've been at the stage, or we recognize various, you know, degrees of it where our human likes and dislikes have an impact on who and what we're receptive to. Okay, we can see this even when what we read. There's certain topics in the Bhagavatam which we will have a natural affinity for, and others that you won't. Not necessarily anything to do with the level of devotion, but speaks more to what our human inclinations are, what our human likes and dislikes are. There is nothing wrong with this. This is a necessary stage of our growth. It's a necessary stage of our development. Recognizing it is important. And then also doing things where we stretch ourselves, where we, just like a person who's, I'm talking about prasadam a lot today, but it just makes a really good analogy. Just like we might expand our palate for a wider range of foods by trying other things in small doses. So similarly with Shastra or various speakers, we can hear a little bit. So for example, if we just listened to people whose voice we liked or whose accent we understood or was in a particular type of body, then we are limited by the topics that that person speaks about. and the way that person speaks, no matter how pure they are. It's just like if we only keep our dietary choices limited, we can only eat certain people's cooking, right? So you take Prabhupada, for example. A lot of devotees struggle, say they don't listen to Prabhupada's classes because they say they struggle to hear his accent, and because they struggle to understand and listen to his accent, they feel like, oh, I don't like feeling uncomfortable. I don't like, what is it? It's our own selfishness. I don't like feeling like this is not a pleasant experience. I don't like feeling like I can't intellectually connect. I don't like feeling uninspired. We don't like seeing our inability to be receptive. Okay. So the best way around that is listen to just 5 minutes of Srila Prabhupada. Do what you can tolerate, because what you'll find is if you keep doing 5 minutes, 3 minutes here and there, oh, one day you'll be like, oh, actually, I understood everything he said. That's amazing. Now I want to hear more. Oh my God, Prabhupada's amazing. Wow, Prabhupada explains things in a way that nobody else does. Oh my God, he's just hardcore. And then you'll want to come back and hear him. And it won't be about, oh, Bengali accent or this accent or person from this country or this age or whatever, or software, because you'll have an appetite, because this is what Krishna reciprocates with, our endeavor. Our endeavor. How much am I paying attention to my human shortcomings and making sure that, like water, I go around them, above them, or under them, not get blocked by them. Okay, so this is how we apply intelligence in such a way that it attracts Krishna's mercy. Because when we are honest about our conditioning, we are less controlled by it, because we can do something about it, and we can make the appropriate prayers in the right rhythm with the right affection and love with the choicest words. So I have time for one question. There's something in the message.
Yeah, there is something in the chat room.
Shall I read it out? Because there's a few.
Yeah, you may. I don't know how you're going to take it, because there are like 3 questions. This person is like Maharaj Parikshit speaking to Shukadev.
She is. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She has my heart. I know her very well. Okay.
Okay, so you can take it.
Okay, so
you can read it for the hearing of the
yes,
audience.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
So this devotee is asking, thank you for such a heart-opening class. Was something I greatly needed to hear. Question 1, you mentioned perfect hearing leads to perfect chanting and perfect recitation, but it must be connected to 3 things. Can you please repeat what these 3 things are? So the 3 things were, what were the 3 things? Sahadev Prabhu, you wrote them down, didn't you? What are the 3 things? Oh, yes. What are we hearing? Okay, so the content. What is our attitude towards the hearing? So what's driving our attitude? So if it's submissive, what's driving the submission? Is it desperation? Is it material desire? Is it spiritual desire? Is it genuine care and affection? And how attentive is our hearing? Number 2, how can we avoid going on cruise control in our relationship with Guru and Krishna out of fear of surrender, because it feels like what is asked of us is greater than how much strength one has? Okay, what you're describing isn't so much cruise control. Cruise control is what I use to describe where we feel like we're in a really good place, and so we take our foot off the accelerator or stop endeavoring because we're like, okay, this is enough. What you're describing is it's more like you're held back or stuck because you feel like actually what's being asked is out of our qualification. You know, we're not qualified to do anything. The qualification comes with the instruction, and the empowerment to fulfill that instruction comes with the degree that we surrender to that instruction. Surrender starts with an attitude, a willingness to, I want to do what you're asking me to do, and I'm going to do what you're going to ask me to do. And we take the small baby steps. As we take the small baby steps, you know, that empowerment starts to gain momentum. First the seeds, and then it really, really moves forward, snowballs. And before you know it, you feel like, wow, I did something which felt impossible. There's a very famous quote of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj's where he says, when our desire to serve outweighs our ability, and yet we act without hesitation, that is the moment that empowerment occurs. That act doesn't have to be a massive thing. Every small act we make towards fulfilling that instruction can be imbued with that empowerment, because we can all take a little step unhesitatingly. So do a step that you can take without hesitation. Then the next step you'll be able to take without hesitation, and then the next step. And in this way, you can have moment after moment of empowerment, which then becomes minutes, days, weeks, and then incessant empowerment. I feel like we should end there. I know I haven't answered question 3.
Well,
but I think the rest of the class can answer the last question.
well, Abdi already says thank you so much. We all thank you so much. We all appreciate because we all have enjoyed so much from your sharing today. And dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute. Hare Krishna Africa is kind of known for questioning, and oftentimes these questions are as a result of the thirst of the devotees. They want to drink more. But our speaker has to attend to other important engagement.
Yes,
So-
I'm sorry. I thought we started at 3 today. And so when I found out it was 4, I was like, oh. Then I ended up
Yeah.
short. Otherwise, I'd blocked off 3 till 5.
Well, sorry. Yeah. They're trying to end this clock adjustment. Let's see if they do.
Let's see.
But dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute, and we all chant the loudest and the loveliest Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker for today, Her Grace Dr. Shakti Devi Ki Jai. Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Kripa Sindhu Vacha
Namo Namaha. Our grace
Ananta
Mother
Koti
Siti
Vaishnava
Shakti
Ki
Devi
Jai.
Ki Jai. Siti Shakti Devi Ki Jai.
Yay!
This compounder Charashila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Our glories to assemble devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.